Why would a mother consider placing her child for adoption? Well, there are a number of reasons, and in the 25 plus years that I've been handling adoptions exclusively in my law practice, I have run across many women, and they share some of the same common reasons. They're not always the same reasons, but I keep seeing the same reasons over and over again. So I thought it might be helpful if I shared those reasons with you. The number one reason is that a woman is simply not yet ready to be a parent. She may be a teenager and simply not ready to parent on her own, and her parents aren't willing to essentially step in and become the parent of that child. So, and some young women actually have their parents kick them out of the house when they discover they're pregnant, and they have no place to go, so much less the funds and the means to support themselves and a child. Normally, though, the young women that I see who are choosing to place their children for adoption are not teenagers. Many are, but the majority of women that I see are in their 20s and sometimes 30s. These women have seen life, they've experienced life, and they've seen their friends try to parent and have no help. The help that they counted on simply vanished. So these women have been trying to support themselves, and they know how hard it is to make a living, to put a roof over their heads, to feed themselves, much less feed a child as well, and still have the ability to maybe go to school or have a social life. So many young people today are having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to support themselves at a minimal level. So finances is often a very big factor, and it's a factor that they don't see improving anytime soon. If it was just a temporary situation, then they could probably find a way to parent a child and bridge that gap until they could afford having a child and supporting a child. But they realize, because they've live life for a few years, they understand that probably the situation isn't going to improve a great deal. Most of the women that I see who place their children for adoption have a head on their shoulders. They are mature enough and bright enough to know and to accept that they don't have the wherewithal to be the kind of parent that they want their child to have. So, and that's a big factor for moms. You know, it's absolutely every single mom I've ever met, none of them have ever said they didn't love their child or they didn't want their child. Circumstances just conspired to create a situation that made parenting a child literally impossible for them, so that it wouldn't be in the best interest of the child for that mother to parent, and it wouldn't be in her own best interest. And these are women who can see the issues in their lives and find a solution to the problem for themselves and for their baby. The idea of parenting a child when you're really not ready for it is a recipe for disaster, both for the mother and for the child. That's when we see child neglect, child abuse, children being removed from their parents' homes and placed with the Department of Children and Families. That's when we see children suffering and parents suffering because that parent tried to parent that child, but it really wasn't in her best interest and certainly not the child's best interest. So when a young woman comes to me wanting to make an adoption plan, I have such respect for that young woman, because I know that she is thinking about what is best for everyone involved. So not being ready to parent is usually the number one reason. And as a part of that, finances, as I said, is usually a very big factor. Not having a place to live or a large enough place to live. For example, being able to afford maybe a studio apartment or living on somebody's sofa or even living, with their parents or a friend, and not being able to maintain a 2-bedroom apartment, one for the mother and one for the child, which is required by law. in most states. Not having a job that makes enough money for that mom to be able to support herself comfortably and to pay for the diapers, the food, the clothes, the medical care, everything that child is going to need. Time is another huge factor. As I said, so many young people today cannot even make it on one job. They have got to have at least 2 jobs. Some work 3 jobs. Some are trying to go to school to better themselves and work a job to support themselves simultaneously, and to find time to be able to parent a child on top of all of those commitments and responsibilities. It just becomes absolutely overwhelming unless a mom has help. So that leads me to the next reason why a young woman may consider placing her child for adoption. If a young woman who is unmarried or married and doesn't have the ability to support herself, or is not ready for some other reason to be a parent, her parents often can step in. But when that's not possible, or she's not in a good relationship with her parents, or her parents simply themselves don't have the wherewithal to help her financially and emotionally, then she has no help. The mom has no help. And so she's back in the situation of trying to support herself. Some moms are trying to break a cycle. So many of the young women that I meet come from families where they themselves suffered abuse, neglect. Their parents, one or both of them, were drug users, or they simply were not parented well, were not loved, were not nurtured, were not paid attention to. And they know that this is a cycle that's been going on in their family of origin for many years, generations of parenting. And they are strong enough and brave enough to choose to break that cycle for their own child. Because we parent the way we were parented. And if we don't either take drastic steps to learn how to parent in a loving, nurturing way, we're going to repeat the same mistakes that our parents made when they parented us. And so many young women who choose giving their child up for adoption as a solution to create a wonderful life for their child, because that's what it's all about. It's about creating a wonderful life for that child. Another reason why a young woman might consider giving her child up for adoption is because she is not in a relationship with the father of the child, or had an abusive relationship with the father and wants to sever ties with him. Having a child by a man that you don't want to continue any sort of relationship with, who might be toxic to you in your life, is a recipe for disaster. Because when you choose to bring a child into the world, you are going to be tied to that birth father for a lifetime. That father is going to need to pay child support, whether you enforce that through a court process or your state's Department of Children and Families mandates that and makes that happen. That father has the right to visit this child and be this child's parent. So it's very important for any young woman to know that if she's going to parent a child, that the father of that child cannot typically be successfully cut out of that child's life. So that means that that father will be in your life as well. Another reason that I hear very often from young women considering giving a child up for adoption is that they have another child already, or children that they now need to pay attention to. So many young women, in fact, I received a call this morning from a young woman who is expecting twins, and she already has a 9-year-old son who was removed from her care and custody because she was involved in drug use. And so the state took her son away and placed her son in a foster family. And she is excited about getting him back in her care and custody in the next couple of months. And the opportunity to, again, parent her son is so exciting, and she knows that she needs to focus on him and meeting his needs and supporting him as well. So having another child, in this case twins, coming into the family is simply more than she can handle. So I hear this a lot from young women who already have children, that they need to focus on the child or children that they already are parents to. And to make the best life for the child that they're carrying, they want to choose a family who's going to be a wonderful, loving, nurturing family for that child. And we can talk more about how a young woman chooses an adoptive family and what kind of relationship she can have with that adoptive family that she chooses, both during the pregnancy and once the child is born and goes home with them. I hope that this helped you today. I'm Linda Barnby, adoption attorney, reminding you to live your life as if it's the only one you'll ever have. See you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe.